Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about silence, and I'm actually going to also talk about some journaling and show you different journals that I use, because to me that's a part of that can also be used for meditation, and silence is an important part of meditation, and I did talk about that last week. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that because I know a lot of people have told me, and I felt this way when I was younger, prior to college and during college, and even right after college. So essentially, my 20s up until my 20s, that I wasn't comfortable with silence. So I really want to talk about that and just share some of my morning routine of where silence can be used, and then just how I use silence. And some of that is journaling. I don't journal all the time, but when I do like it to be quiet or have my meditation music, which I talked about last week in my meditation video. But silence is important for our journeys. And I know it's hard to sit in silence, particularly when we have those negative thoughts. And that's a lot of times why I wouldn't sit in silence, is because I didn't want to have to think about those negative thoughts and those negative feelings that I had about myself. And I didn't want to work with those. But what I found is working with silence and being in silence and using meditation and using journaling has helped me with that. When you face it head on, then you're able to work through it. And it's going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight to be able to sit in silence and sit with your thoughts and your feelings. That just isn't something that we do overnight. It is something that you have to continue to work towards. And for me, it started with, so I'm going to take you on a little journey. I guess this would be a little bit of story time. So I started seminary back in 2013. So August of 2013. I was 32 years old, as I've talked about in a former video. And seminary, the first year was hard. Like, there was a lot of, it was academically rigorous. I was feeling that I didn't belong there. I felt like I couldn't keep up and things like that. So it was really hard. And then there's the spiritual journey. You're learning all of these things, debunking all of these myths. For me, all these myths that I had learned about religion and Christianity from an early age. And then I'm starting to learn like real truth, and I'm learning the biblical history and the biblical context for the things that I've learned these last 32 years. So all of that was a really hard time for me. I also went through a really bad breakup. I had met someone and we went really fast and really hard. And then we broke up, and that just took a lot. I was just emotionally drained between all of that. And that happening in that first year, that first 6 to 9 months, was really a lot for me. So the May after I finished my first year of seminary, I actually went to Greenbow House of Prayer, which is in southern Georgia, and it's a silent retreat center. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that that is where I fell in love with silence. I fell in love with when we went to this retreat, it was always a silent retreat. I always went for the silent retreat part. Not everybody went for that. But essentially, you're at a retreat center, and your whole day is filled with silence. You're walking around the grounds, in your room, on the front porch, and I'll put you all some pictures after this segment so you can see what I'm talking about. But there, and the only time we talked was, sometimes we would talk at lunch. It was meant to be silent, but when you're sitting around the table of people, it's kind of hard. When you're all by yourself, that's a little easier. But we'd have a couple questions maybe at lunch. But dinner was really the first time where we broke our silence for the day. And we had communal style meals, which I always loved for lunch and dinner. And I actually got I have the cookbook from the pastor who is the chef at the Silent Retreat Center, and I'll show you all of that. But really, at this retreat center is where I fell in love with silence. And I love this place so much. They had an outdoor labyrinth, which I talked about last week. And really, it was in that space that I began to love that. And actually, in the next 2 years of my seminary journey, because it is 3 years, and remember, I went after my first year. In the next 2 years, I went 5 more times, and I've been twice since I graduated from there. So, and I live away from Georgia, so it's harder to get back, but I have been there since I graduated. Welcome to Greenbow. So this is the front porch that I would always sit on every morning that I was at Greenbow. I would usually take 2 or 3 days to go. This is also the front of the house, the porch I just showed you. side of the green bowl. That's actually the chapel, which is the back. This is a picture from the labyrinth. There is an outdoor labyrinth that I would walk every day that I was there. That was always important to me. And for me, it really was the rhythm of the retreat and just being able to have a different, knowing that you can move around the grounds and you move around inside and that it's going to be silent, whatever you decide to do in that space. And I've really incorporated those things into my life now when I'm not at a retreat center. So after going to that retreat center, that's when I actually decided to make the meditation station in my home, which was, that would have been the summer of 2014. And I showed you all that last week. So definitely check out my meditation video if you haven't seen that, and you'll have the context of what I'm talking about. So I started the meditation station, and then like that summer I started that, and then I was starting the Buddhist class. So I was having all of that start at one time, and that's where I started the silent and centered meditation with the Buddhist monks at Emory, and that is just where my silence journey started. My first year of seminary, I had also taken a spiritual practices class, and that's where I actually learned to journal the way that I journal now, and that's why I want to transition and show you some of my journals, because I no longer journal in journals that have lines in them. I really like journals that don't have lines, because I have found that I feel constrained when I have lines. It's like you got to stay within these lines. So I actually do sketchbooks. And again, I'm going to show you all those. But I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of my journey with silence. All of this started, 7 years ago. It seems like I've been doing this for way longer, and 7 years also feels like a short time. But that's how I came to be friends with, and that's how I want to say it, be friends with silence and meditation, is that it has been a journey. I can talk about this and I can talk about it with passion, but it's not something that I've always had in my life. And the reason I do talk about it with passion is because it's been something that's really helped me in the last 7 years. Welcome back to Greenbow. This is the chapel at Greenbow, a great place just to stop, go in, light a candle, light incense. There was nightly prayer if you decided to do that. And this is just one of my favorite pictures leading up to the labyrinth. And this is a picture from my room. I'd always enjoy just sitting in my room and reading. And we're going to move to journals. So I wanted to share a little bit about my journal journey, and I'm going to just take you through what journaling has looked like for me through the years. So I'm going to just move these to the side for a minute. So when I started journaling, I started with wide ruled notebook. So I started in high school and then college, and I never journaled all the time. So one notebook probably lasted me a year or more. So I have multiple of those. I'm not going to show you from summer camp of 1997 what I was talking about, but that's kind of how, and it's been interesting to always look at these periodically throughout the years. So from that, I have also had like hardbound journals with the lines in it. Again, this one's an older one, I think from high school or college. I can't quite remember. Uh, Again, line journals. And since I left seminary, I use this one periodically. So the thing as I'm thinking about journaling, I've always, even at a younger age, I knew that I had something that I wanted to talk about and I couldn't like verbally talk about it. So I decided to write it. So I always knew that's why I was journaling. That's the reason I journaled. It wasn't consciously that I was doing that, but as I've gotten older, I've realized how important that was for me. So I wanted to talk about a new way I learned to journal in seminary. So I took a spiritual practices class, and we actually made these journals in class. And as you can see, it's a composition book, one that doesn't have the spiral binding. And then we actually decorated the outside of it, and then I put just colored duct tape on the back. So, and the thing I like about this new way to journal, I also just want to point out that I found one of my pens that I like. I like to use these scrapbooking markers, and I found my blue one, so I thought that was exciting. So I want to take you through, I've marked a couple pages. So what I like about this, we started learning, we would get different poems and things like that. And I started putting pictures in my journals. You'll see the coloring in the background for there. So, and again, the way I like this type of journaling because you can cut out things, you have pictures. This is a picture our professor gave us during class, and these are poems, and I just decorated the piece of paper. So, this is really where I started to understand that journaling doesn't have to be you writing line for line in a line journal. So that's where I really started debunking what journaling was for me, was with this. So since then, I've actually moved towards a, and again, I did this, I bought a sketchbook and I decorated. So in this journal, I actually have some drawings that I've done, and this is like the different emotions and then how you're feeling underneath all of those emotions. Other things in the journal are kind of affirmations, goals, really vulnerable. These are some of my, this is how I journal now. I use my marker. Again, it's just free thoughts if there's something I'm thinking about or if there's a specific prompt. Journal even had my PhD outline, which as a former advisor, I've pretty much stuck to this. Some classes have changed, but overall, it looks like I'm right on track. That's a journal from about 2 years ago. And since then, I've gotten another sketchbook. I didn't decorate this one, but this has been my journal for the last about year and a half. And so I recently just bought a new one. And this one I got 20% more sheets. So that was exciting. So one thing to know about my journals is I always like it to be a positive thing in the very beginning. So this was something I actually wrote down when I was talking to my therapist a couple weeks back. And it's just something I wanted to be positive about because I am putting that out in the universe and I want that to be the first thing that I see when I open up my journal. So I hope you've enjoyed just a couple ways that you can journal. I pulled some paintings that I've done in my journals. This is one describing growth. Things start with a seed and then it becomes this lovely tree. And then this was actually a scene from a recent trip in May when I was at a trip in North Carolina. This was a picture by the ocean. Um, this is a tree in case you needed to know. But anyway, that just shows you kind of how I journal. So there's going to be pictures in my journal. There's going to be magazine clips. There's going to be writing. And again, I like to use the scrapbook pens. And you'll see that I found this other blue one. This is actually my second one, my second kit that I've bought. And I really like, they're very smooth. Again, they're scrapbook markers that I really enjoy. Zing writer in case you'd like to get some. But I hope this has just showed you that journaling for me is one of those things I do in silence. If I need to turn on the meditation music and journal, or if I just journal in silence. So this is another thing that I use during silence and meditation. So I hope this helps and just gives you some tips and tricks if you always wanted to journal. Just know that it's not a one size fits all when it comes to journaling and meditation and mindfulness. So I hope you enjoyed seeing the pictures of the silent retreat and then some of my journals as well. What I wanted to leave you with before we say goodbye is just other ways that you can really enjoy silence. And some of the ways to enjoy silence and meditation, it may not be truly silence. Because I have, for example, and I'm going to show you really quick, I have a record player over there. And so my record player, I specifically wanted to get jazz and just soothing music. And sometimes my silence, even though there's music going on, I may have my record player going, it's still silence in that you still are able to focus on yourself and what's going on inside. You're able to go deeper. So sometimes silence may not be like starch silence, as we talk about, no noise at all. I'm always going to have noise. I have my ceiling fan going. If I have my humidifier going, there's always going to be noise in my apartment, always something buzzing in the refrigerator, all of those things. So, but you can kind of have also that background noise, what we call white noise. And so that too is getting you in touch with yourself. It may not be, again, that stark silence like you can hear a pin drop, but it's also inviting you to be in relationship with your feelings and your emotions. So that's just another way to kind of think about that. And you can also play music while you're journaling. That's another great opportunity. And so it just gets you into a rhythm. And it also, maybe you work towards, you start with the music, but then you work towards just silence. Also, being outside in nature is a great way because then you're hearing, like, to be out in nature and to actually acknowledge the birds that you hear, the leaves rustling, particularly now it's fall. Like, there's beauty in that. There's beauty in that silence, that even though you do hear all of those sounds, you're still able to interact with those things in nature and just be appreciative of those sounds that you're hearing in nature, and those smells and those tastes and things like that. So I think that's part of also meditating. It may not be meditation music, it may not be sitting in centering meditation and silence, but all of that is also considered, for me, considered meditation, because you're becoming one with the environment around you, but you're also focusing on your interaction with those things out in nature, or if you're sitting in your apartment journaling and things like that. So the to me, the most important is how you're interacting with those things, and you're realizing the relationships that come in that silence, in that meditation. So I hope those things have helped, just giving you some more ideas, and hopefully just helping you get comfortable with silence, because I really do believe, for me, and for others, that silence really helps us to work through things that we have going on in life. And it's just a when you can embrace it, it's just one of those beautiful things that you didn't know you needed until you had it. So I would highly encourage you to start practicing. I mean, it could be 1 to 2 minutes at a time, and then you work your way up with silence and with meditation. And if you haven't, make sure you see my video about meditation. I think that will also give you more context, as I said before. And leave your comments below if you've gone to any silent retreat centers, if you have some favorites. I'll also put notes on the one that I mentioned, Green Bow House of Prayer. And if you all have any other notes or comments, let me know. And make sure you hit that subscribe button and like and share. Thanks for coming.